My name's Libby, and I have been homeschooling my kids. Oh goodness, I should have added it up before I came on tonight. I believe we're entering our ninth year. I'm mama of four, and we have lots of learning differences in our homeschool. All four of my kids have dyslexia. One has an ADHD diagnosis, and for those of you who have kiddos with learning differences, you know that a lot of those learning differences kind of go together. So if you have a child with ADHD, they may likely have another diagnosis of some other type of learning disorder. That is not uncommon. But tonight we're specifically talking about ADHD and homeschooling with ADHD. It just adds an extra sparkle to it all. Sometimes the days are long and rough, and sometimes they're absolute joy. Having a kiddo with ADHD is an adventure, as all of you guys know. My ADHD child is now 13, and he has been homeschooled since kindergarten. So he's come a long way. He's doing well. He's thriving. And yeah, I'm trying to think of where to go from there. So I would love to hear your guys' questions and see what it is that you're thinking about as you're entering into this new phase with your ADHD student.
So I don't know if there's somebody else on. Is it just me, Melissa?
No, there's others, but you go ahead, Terry.
Okay, go ahead. Well, this is my first year of homeschooling. My son has always gone to public school. He's 13. He's an 8th grader, so we're sort of entering that zone this year. He has ADD without the hyperactivity part, but he still has a lot of distractions. So just trying to figure out what strategies might work to work with him the best way during the day. And we bought curriculum we're going to try, but I'm sure there's with kids with ADD as well. So just
sure
look like and what your experience is. That's all. I don't have any specific questions. I was just trying to get some strategies that have worked for other people.
And you know, maybe some of the other parents here might have some ideas too, but I would say since it's your first year, probably a really good thing to start with as far as strategies go will be trying to support him to figure out where the best spot in the house is for him to do his schoolwork. You know, I would say probably, you know, really when you have a child with ADHD or ADD, you really have to somehow let go of expectations. And there's like a whole series of ways we could travel out on that conversation, right? Like there's so much there. But I will tell you, when we first started homeschooling, my son, I had these expectations of what homeschooling was going to be like. I was like, okay, bud, you're going to sit at this table and you are going to have this pen and these books and you are going to read these books. And I had to let go of that awfully fast because, you know, the child with ADHD has their own unique set of learning styles, right? So my first encouragement for you guys as far as strategy goes is try to help your child to figure out things like, where are they going to do their schoolwork? Does it have to be at a table? I would say no. Could it be on their bed? Could it be on the couch? Where can they be physically in the house? And how can you support them to make that space successful? Are they going to be allowed to listen to music, or does it have to be totally quiet for your child? You know, those kinds of things are going to help them to be very much more successful in their school time if they have the right environment for their brain. You know, I know that when I started, I had kind of a schoolroom space in our house, and I put up lots of beautiful posters. We had all kinds of charts, and for some of my children, that was wonderful. They loved it. But for my ADHD child, he could not handle the visual stimulation. So I had to find a space for him where the walls were plain. He needed quiet. He couldn't handle things like a ticking clock or a buzzing light. And they're things that for me, I may not have ever noticed, but for him, they were huge distractors. So, and you know, if you're the parent of an ADHD kid, you know what those things are going to probably be for your child, but support them as they're trying to figure out what their new learning environment is going to be like. Help them talk through those issues with them. That's going to be a huge support to them. Ask them what they hear. Ask them how the light is affecting them. Talk to them about how the chair feels to their body. Taking care of some of those things can remove difficulty for them as they're trying to figure out how to handle homeschooling. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Hi. Thank you for doing this. This is really nice. My son, he's 6.5, and he hasn't officially been diagnosed with ADHD, but he has seen different therapists, and they were thinking it was ADHD, and then COVID happened, so we haven't been able to officially get a diagnosis. But kindergarten was horrible. It was a terrible, terrible year. I mean, I spoke with this teacher nonstop. It was bad. And, you know, he just really struggles, many, many distractions. So once COVID happened and I tried homeschooling at home, it was so hard for me. I don't know, he's little, he's only 6. So, you know, it's hard for him to sit still. Do you have any advice with that? And then he also has a little sister who's 4, and she's, you know, she wants to play, but my son gets distracted by her. So I just don't even know where to go or begin with my poor son. So any advice you have, because I'm just out of my mind for like a little one, because I know the last person has a 13-year-old and mine's only 6. So
yes, well, our first years, my son had the same kindergarten experience. He started out in kindergarten, and then we ended up pulling him out just a couple months into the school year because the interaction was really, really bad for him.
yeah.
And the teacher, I was getting so much negative feedback
Mm-hmm.
that we finally just said, no, we're just going to do this at home. And, you know, the wonderful thing is that you get to provide all that positive feedback for him,
Right,
letting
right.
him know how smart he is, how wonderful he is. Just, you know, pour all that onto his life and how special that he gets to have that in his environment now. That's really wonderful.
Yeah, it's true.
I would say one of the things that helped us the most at the beginning, when my little guy, he had such a short attention span.
Yeah.
I would say what we used to try were things like sand timers.
Mm-hmm.
There's zillions of them on Amazon. You can order a set. There's all kinds of timer options. You know, talk to him about if you can sit and work on this until the sand timer runs out, then you get to go outside and do skateboard in the backyard for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Break it up as much as you can for him so that he has physical activity. His body is going to need that.
Mm-hmm.
Within reason, you may have to start out with really short time periods working, and then slowly but surely you'll see that he's going to be able to build some on that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say that some days, I know for my ADHD child, some days he was not able to work.
Mm-hmm.
His brain just could not do it.
Right.
So there were some days where I was like, okay, we've tried. It's been a valiant effort,
Yeah.
but today is not the day. And it's okay to say that. That is what's best for your child.
Mhm.
And then on those days where he's able to do more and handle more, then those are the days to go for it.
Yeah.
And you are your child's best advocate, right? You know him the best. You can support him the best. Just try to find those little ways that you can help him to work on increasing his ability to sit when he's able to do that work. Anything that you can give him that's hands-on learning, manipulatives, anything that keeps the body moving.
Yeah.
For the little guys, that helps a lot. I know our first couple years of homeschool, we actually had a trampoline in our
Mhm.
front room, in our living room, and that was his break.
Yeah.
If I could get him to sit still for 5 to 10 minutes and do math with me, then I was like, go,
Yeah,
bud!
that'd be
He would
amazing.
just
Yeah.
take off for that special activity and really be able to work that out physically. It was really excellent.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you.
yes. Oh, you know, I did want to, one other thing for the little guys. There is, I'm sure if you haven't already heard this word or this term, I needed it really badly, and it was something I really wanted to share with you guys. If you haven't already learned about executive function, now is the time. Children with ADHD can struggle with executive function. And what executive function is, it's the brain's ability to handle things like concepts like time, organizing, following instruction. So, you know, for an ADHD child, they may struggle with 5 instructions. You know, if you give them a list of 5 things, right? You already know this about your kiddo. They may not be able to brush their teeth, get dressed, make their bed, put on their shoes, and sit down at the table to do math. It might just be time for breakfast. Then when that's done, go brush your teeth. They might only be able to do 1 instruction at a time. So I encourage you to find out as much as you can about executive function. Help your child with those kinds of skills to build their executive function so that they can function better in their day. Those of you who are Pinterest mamas, there's all kinds of really great stuff on Pinterest. You can check out websites like understood.org. You know, if you already have a cognitive behavioral therapist that you see, or talk with your child's pediatrician, those kinds of resources are really excellent to help you build your skill, to help your child build their skill, right? So yeah, executive function, what we used to do for that, I used to draw little pictures. So I might have a 3-picture series for morning routine. And my son would learn that he had to start with picture number 1, which was get dressed. So it's a picture of him getting dressed. Then picture 2, brush teeth. Picture number 3, breakfast. So we would work and work and work on, okay, what are your pictures you're doing this morning? And then he could follow those. It helps the child to build their skill so that they can function better in their day. And it also will help you have some sanity because now you're adding homeschooling, right? And if you can help your child to be able to move through 1, 2, 3 on their own without you having to prompt every single thing in their morning, that is going to help over time. Now, I'm not going to tell you that it's going to happen just like that. You're not going to have these up on the wall and magically your child's going to be able to handle 3 tasks in a row. But it's steps like that that are going to help you to support your young child to be able to grow in their ability to grow their own executive function. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. That does. Thanks.
Libby, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So I was reading through some tips through some different websites today and talking about starting the school day with like the topics or the subjects that require the most mental energy. Have you found that kind of staggering like what you do and when you do it has been beneficial? Like maybe if they really struggle with math, that's the first thing you tackle, or does it just depend on like the mood?
I would say that it really for my child, it would vary because he couldn't always handle what I wanted him to handle.
Mhm.
Even if he had, like the first thing in the morning should be like the time that the child might have the most energy but with my ADHD child, it would just depend on so many factors.
Yeah.
It could be that the toothpaste really bothered him, or the texture of his shirt drove him crazy, or a seam in a sock like sent him over the edge. Like there are many, many factors that come into play for kids that have learning differences. And so really, really what it came down to was that I had to adjust my thinking. I had to kind of get rid of those preconceived ideas, like I was talking about a little earlier. Some students are going to be able to sit down at the table and accomplish 4 solid hours of schoolwork. That is not likely to be the ADHD student. Now, there are some ADHD kids who do not have that hyperactivity piece, but the ADHD really is more within the mind and how the mind processes. So they might be able to sit for a little bit longer. But I would just encourage you, if that's your child, make sure you're kind of keeping tabs on what they're processing, how that's going, what the flow is with their work, and how they're processing their work, to kind of help support them to move through what they're working on in their schoolwork. I wish I could say that there was a certain time of day that worked better or a schedule. But really, as the parent of an ADHD child, I had to let go of that completely and just try to be flexible and open and sometimes just have a sense of humor and just be like, okay, what actually really helped me was to be able to deeply just sit back and be like, your brain is amazing. I wish I could understand my child's brain. There are so many times where I just look at what he's doing, how he processes, how he learns, and I'm just blown away. So if you can take a moment in your day, just breathe, like look at how they're processing. Find that moment for yourself where you can be in wonder about how amazing your child is. And just breathe in that moment, allow them to be who they are. And, that has really helped me over time to just be like, oh, okay, they're not going to finish this workbook this year. But really, guys, it's not about the workbook. It's not. It's about the forward growth of your child. It's about the enjoyment of your child as a human being. It's about experiencing education with them, alongside them, and having those wonderful moments of wonder about who they are and how they learn. Oh my word. And if you can be in that with them and enjoying that hands-on, wonderful experience of learning, it really is so special and so wonderful to be alongside them in that journey and to be able to support them.
Well, and I think we have to remember they wouldn't do any better. They'd probably do worse in a classroom environment. So we do the best we can, right? I mean,
Yes.
I know my son, it was very much a challenge. I mean, and if you consider he was in public school till 7th grade, huge challenge for him. And we just got his diagnosis a year ago. So you look back and you think, oh my gosh, how hard was his life for him? You know, so if I can, you know, I can't do any worse than that, right?
Yes. Well, and now you have the chance to see him be able to thrive in a very supportive environment. He's no longer going to be required to sit still for 45 minutes to an hour at a time. How wonderful is that for a child who needs to move? That they're going to be able to learn so much more and in an effective way. You know, I'm not saying anything bad about the school system. They have to function like that. There's not another way. But in the homeschool environment, they get to have more of what they really need to learn. And for that, I just adore homeschooling. It's a wonderful environment for kids with learning differences. Anybody else have any burning questions or any topics?
Well, I just want to follow up on what you said too, Libby. And I know when I was an APS teacher and when I was teaching special ed and we had students with ADD, ADHD, they never really, I mean, like Terry said, like the environment is not really set up for them to thrive and to succeed, right? And what I've seen you do with your son is be able to adapt a learning environment that makes him successful, but also make him feel safe and feel confident with his learning, but also to be able to find those gifts and talents that he does have. Because so many ADD, ADHD students that I encountered, they just felt stupid, or they felt dumb, or they were shamed, or, you know, I've had several moms come to me and say, oh yeah, like the teacher just said, like they were a behavior problem. And it wasn't that they were a bad kid, it's just that they, like, physically and mentally, it was so uncomfortable for them to be in that classroom environment that it was overwhelming. And so their behavior would reflect what was happening on the inside. So through this, I mean, it seems overwhelming. And I would say too, like Libby's saying, to let go of expectations. If all this year is about giving your kid peace, finding their learning style, finding what they love, finding a place of comfort and learning for them, you will succeed. So maybe you don't finish the math book, maybe you don't read all the books on the book list, but if you're able to find those things that help them to connect and make them feel successful and able to like kind of hone in on what those gifts and talents are, your year is going to be wildly successful because you're going to be able to move forward. Like, you can always learn math, like that's always going to be there, but to kind of break that cycle of like kind of shame and fear and frustration, that's going to be huge for your students, for your kiddos. So be encouraged with that too. This year doesn't even have to be about academics. It could just be about, let's figure out what works for you. And that would be wildly successful.
Yes. Yes, my son's school experience was so horrible. And unfortunately, he just happened to get the teacher who didn't know anything about learning differences. And so my son was labeled a discipline problem, and his punishment was that he was not allowed to go to recess. And it was just like, dude, help me out here. The kid just needs to run. Let him go swing on something. He'll be better in the afternoon. But, that was just tragic, actually. But after that couple of months of being in that environment as a 5-year-old, he came home saying, I'm the stupidest kid. I'm the worst kid, Mom. No one wants to be my friend because I'm so bad. And that was a couple of months. It just was heartbreaking to see him believe that kind of stuff about himself. And, really what we found out over time is he's not stupid. He's a brilliant mind, in my opinion. He's a genius child. He's my wonderful
He's
son.
quite brilliant. I can attest to that.
He's wonderful. He's not a discipline problem. He's a good kid. He has a good heart, right? We can all say that about our children because we know them best. We know their hearts. We know how precious and sweet they are. And what a gift to our kids to be able to give that back to them. They are capable. They're very capable. They can do it. They just need some supports to be able to achieve what they do want to achieve. They want to learn and grow. They do. And you know, I wanted to also just touch base really quickly too on all of the supportive and assistive devices that are out there for ADHD students. You guys may already know about all that kind of stuff. If you're working with your pediatrician or cognitive behavioral therapist or some other type of therapist, you may know about things that you can support your child with, like exercise ball. They don't have to sit on a hard chair. Let's let go of those preconceived ideas. They don't have to have a school desk. They could sit on an exercise ball. And that little bit of movement can help the brain just to be able to focus on whatever is in front of them. Weighted vests. You can buy a weighted blanket or a weighted vest. You can find all that kind of stuff online. Amazon.com carries every single thing you ever wanted and more. You can try, they make little cushions for your chair that looks kind of bumpy, like almost like a little porcupine pad. And it's a pillow, so it shifts a little bit like this with the movement of their body. And just something like that, some of those devices for some kids make a world of difference. Another one that's really excellent that I have a good friend, she bought for her son that made a big difference for him, sound canceling headphones. So you may have a child who's very distracted by sound. A ticking clock or a squeaking door, like outside the shed door, might just send them on a trail they can't come back from. So sound canceling headphones, they sell them, I believe she got hers at Costco. There are several types of things out there for students with issues like this that these things can help. For those who have any kind of sensory issues, and if you have a kiddo with those, you know, any little thing, like I was saying, my son had a thing with the wrong texture of shirt or the seam in the sock would drive him bananas. So, you know, and what teacher at a school can know all of those things? That's not possible for them to know that. They've got sometimes hundreds of students. So you have the chance to know those things for your kiddo, and that is going to make a huge difference in their world. Yeah, so check out those kinds of assistive tools.
So did you find, Libby, that changing around the media that you use to teach one subject, for instance, we're going to do a tiny bit out of a book, and we're going to do a video, and we're going to do something on the History Channel, and we're going to do a game. Did that kind of movement around within the same subject help, or was it worse?
I would say that for my child, it helped. My child loved that. He still loves it because it breaks up his day, and he needs lots of breaks still as a 13-year-old. He needs to be able to get up and move. He likes to sit on the couch sometimes. He likes to go move to a table sometimes. He moves a lot. He likes to sit outside sometimes. He'll take his books out into the backyard. He'll lay on his stomach on the hot cement sometimes. He can put up with that for a couple of minutes and do handwriting practice outside or math problems. When he was little, we would do math outside on the concrete with chalk. I did not make him answer his problems on a piece of paper. He could do that just fine on the cement with a piece of chalk. I knew he had completed it. He knew he had. We didn't have to turn that piece of paper in to an instructor. So anything like that, any manipulative, yes. So yes, 100%. For my child, that really worked. I would say that is probably going to be individual to your student. And as you're going along, you will see, okay, this does not work for my kiddo. They cannot handle that much stimulation. It might be too much input. And that you will just have to gain that information as you go along. Does that make sense? Do any of you guys have kids with sensory issues? Do your children get like sensory overload and then kind of shut down?
My son has that too.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it will be a learning process, and I'll tell you this, it won't be the same every day. So don't give up on, don't get discouraged. Okay, everybody's going to get discouraged. Let me take that back. We all have discouraging days. But remember, just keep reminding yourself why you're in this, why you're doing it like this. And I have a friend that keeps a journal of all the successes. She writes those down so that she can frequently look back and flip through that and say, oh, yeah, remember on September 9th, 2020, this happened. Oh, this was really great. And to be able to go back and look through that journal, she talks to me about that a lot. And I'm always like, oh, I need to do that for the hard days. Then I can look back and say, oh yeah, remember this? Yeah, so there's an idea to consider starting. Anybody else? Any other topics?
Libby, have you found that there are certain curriculum that work better than others? Like, workbook versus, I know you talked about a lot about manipulatives, but do you have any
Great question. Yes. Yeah, I totally. I will say, beware the fancy curriculum. For the ADHD student, they may not be able to handle the math page with all the colors of the rainbow and cute pictures and things in bubbles and, all the fancy stuff. That can be very visually confusing and overstimulating for the ADHD child. So we actually found for my son, now that won't be across the board for every child. Some kids can handle it. But for my guy, we found a curriculum called Math-U-See. It is a math manipulative curriculum. It's base 10, so it's cubes. And the page is white with the problems spaced out like 3 inches apart. And that was brilliant for him. He could then focus in on one problem at a time, and he didn't have all that other stuff like crowding in on his brain. The other types of math, I found one that was super cute. I loved it. I so wanted it to work because it was nice for me. But that was where we had started. And I quickly found out he would just shut down. And I was like, what is happening? Well, it was overstimulating for him. So that can be in any curriculum. You may find, an English book or whatever it is, a history book. So I would say pace yourself. Give yourself some time to learn what your child is going to need, what is best for them. And then, you can come up with creative solutions. If the math sheet is overwhelming and they can't deal, okay, so cut the math sheet into 4 sections, or, it's okay to do stuff like that. This is your homeschool. You can make it what your child needs. All of those kinds of things are totally fine to do. You're not going to have to submit a portfolio to anybody, or, you know, the idea of taking it outside. Go, you know, if you have an English grammar thing that you really want to do English grammar and you want to go outside to diagram sentences on the sidewalk, yes, that's great. That gets the child's whole body into their work, and they're going to probably love that versus sitting at a table with a paper and a pencil where they're really feeling kind of stuck and the brain can't, you know, really enjoy what they're learning. But changing it up is okay. I know it's a little scary to think, okay, I might start with this curriculum and then in 2 months figure out it's really horrible for my kid and then I have to go buy something different. Well, I will just say we have all been there. Every homeschool across the land has 50 types of homeschool curriculum on the shelf that we thought was going to be awesome. So that's another one to breathe through, right, Melissa?
Yeah,
Did I answer that question?
Spelling curriculum. Go ahead. Who had the question? Someone had a question. No? Am I kidding? So you guys are also able to, if you don't want to speak up, you can put your questions in the chat box as well. Let's see, what other questions? Sherry, any questions? I see you sitting there. No?
Oh.
Well, hello anyways. Oh, Terry's back.
I feel like, but I'm assuming things like read alouds are also really good, Libby, right? Even for these teens, because that he doesn't have a whole lot of patience for is sitting down to read a novel. I mean, he might read a little bit. I think he'd probably do better if it was more of a read along, and I know he'll have some independent stuff to read too, but I'm just wondering if that's a good approach as well.
You bet. In fact, ear reading counts.
Mm-hmm.
My child loves audiobooks, and he will do Legos for an hour and listen to whatever book he's assigned. Those are great ways to keep the hands moving and the brain engaged during that time. It's great. Now, you may have a requirement for your child as they're getting older. You want them to sit and read. But, you know, I just encourage you, keep thinking outside the box. Remember that you are not schooling them inside the four walls of a school building. They are now schooling at home. So enjoy that. Let your child explore. My kiddo did his very best, like history and science reading, while he was somersaulting, or, you know, I allow him to do Legos during group reading, because we'll do some subjects together, all of my children. So while we're doing history reading, science, some of our read aloud stuff, I allow them to play with manipulative toys. And the one who can answer questions the best is my ADHD child when he has something he can play with during that time. Now, I'm not going to claim that that's going to be true for every ADHD kid. It might be more of a distractor. That's for you to figure out over time. But I just encourage you to kind of open your mind up, let go of those preconceived ideas about what school has to look like. You develop that for your home. You set that tone for your homeschool with your child's needs in mind. Mm-hmm. It's great.
And with the audiobooks too, something like I just have a couple of kids that are really struggle with reading. And so one of the things that we've done too is Hoopla is a great resource. Like you can get like tons of audiobooks from your local library. for free. And so we'll download the book, and then as they're listening, they'll read along. And that's kind of helped improve their reading comprehension that way. But my kids love audiobooks as well. And we actually have like a bucket of fidgets, like Rubik's cubes, or slime, or like just different things, because it's the same thing. Like if my kid is answering questions or reading, her hands need to be busy, and she does much better if her hands are busy. And none of my kids are diagnosed with ADHD, but these are tools that will just work with all your kids. Like we have yoga balls in our, to sit on. We have, let them sit on the couch or sit outside or take trampoline breaks, or we do some, physical exercise before we do something that's going to require them to sit for a little bit, so they kind of like get that sensory input. So these are tips that will work with your non-ADHD, non-ADD kids as well, because they're kids, and none of us, like I can't even sit still for 8 hours without fidgeting and moving and stuff like that. So I love what Libby's saying too, is like the goal is for them to learn. It doesn't matter how they get the information in, like we just want them to learn. And I shared this in our last Zoom meeting that for me, when I started homeschooling, I quickly realized that my goals for my kids were not academic. Yes, I want my kids to know how to read or how to balance a checkbook and things like that. But at the end, like what I really want for my kids is to know how to take care of themselves, take care of each other, to be kind, to know how to work around the things that they aren't good at necessarily, and to be able to know what they are good at. And those things aren't necessarily academic. I have a kid that, is really good at, writing stories and being dramatic, like baking or things like that. You can hone in on those things. If there's a thing that your kid is really interested in, use that as your theme for school. If they love Minecraft, they can build. We did a medieval study, and my kids love Minecraft, so they built castles in Minecraft. And I had like requirements. I'm like, you have to have, this and this. Like we learned about castles, and then they had to build their own castle. You can think outside the box. So if there's something that your kid is really into, bring that into your curriculum, bring that into your homeschool, because that's going to inspire them. Like, and like I said before, like you might have to take some time to kind of unschool or deschool, because it's going to be transition for you and for them. And I don't know, Libby, did you feel that you had to have kind of like a detox time when you did bring your kids home from public school?
Yes, I guess I'm just loving this homeschool homies, Melissa. This is brilliant. I wish I had homeschool homies when I started homeschooling, because I didn't know what in the world was going on at that point. We hadn't had any diagnosis. So I didn't know that could have been a helpful thing. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. Having that period of unschooling to just de-escalate all the pain and problems that many ADHD kids go through in the typical public school classroom, or just any regular school. So doing some unschooling can help them to ease into homeschool. So that it's very valuable to learn a little bit about that, to see if your child could use that break to kind of de-escalate from their experiences.
Yeah. And you're not trying to recreate a public school classroom at home. That's not what homeschooling is about. You're not having to do a 7-hour day like they do at public school and have, whatever. Like you have that ability to be flexible. And like Libby said, when you have a bad day, you can call it quits. And there's value in that too, because your kids are learning how to set boundaries, how to deal with hard days, how to deal with bad days, how to navigate those emotions. And those are all important things as well. And especially kids with learning differences, they need to learn how to navigate those difficult days. They need to learn how to navigate those frustrations. And not that you're like, oh, well, we'll just never do school again. Sometimes you just have to push through. But you have that freedom and that flexibility to work through those emotions and pause. And there's value in that too. Like, yeah, so you didn't finish the history lesson, but you worked through a tantrum, or you worked through a frustration, or you were able to get to the heart of like what was really frustrating them. that there's so much value in that. And so don't look at it just in terms of academics. I think that's one thing that changed my homeschooling perspective a lot. It wasn't about getting through the workbook. It was about, you know, helping shape my kids to who they're going to be when they grow up, you know, to become that whole person, not just someone who can get through, you know, the math lesson. So give yourself grace and give your kid grace, but even as you transition into school, take your time. You don't have to do everything out of the gate. We don't do science every day. We don't do history every day. There's, you know, we'll do reading and math and usually like writing every day, but it looks different for every family. And what works for Libby might not work for you, but we can glean from each other. And there's a great community of moms who want to support you and help you. So don't ever feel like you're stuck or you're alone or that you can't reach out and ask for help. You know, even if you're 2-3 months into the school year, you're like, this is awful. Like we get it. You know, I do good until October. Then I'm like, aren't we done? Like, it's my 180 days over. Like we'll have like a really strong 6 weeks. And then I'm like, okay, you should know everything. Let's go back to summer vacation. But really do, like, you have to kind of de-school yourself as well. Like not only give your child that time to kind of unschool and de-school, but you have to do that too, because I think so often we go into homeschooling thinking we have to replicate public school, and that's not what you're doing. You're getting to, like, and I love Libby's just joy and her passion about this. Like, you get to create an environment where your kid is going to thrive, survive, and succeed. And so have fun figuring out what that looks like. This is an adventure for both of you. And like I said before, like even if you don't accomplish all the academic goals that you wanted to, if you find out like what makes your kid, you know, tick and what things trigger them, what things help them succeed, like, man, they're going to be so far ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I wanted to encourage you guys to look for some community. Look for some support. So obviously, homeschool homies, woo, we're here. That's great. This is a great support right here. Look for other homeschool families. Check out co-ops in your area. Look for, you know, depending on the severity of your child's ADHD, look for someone to support you. If you're really struggling, finding that cognitive behavioral therapist, talk to your pediatrician, get some support there. And, you know, I don't know how many of you guys have considered medications to support your child. That's a very personal decision. And I didn't want to take it down the medications road, but explore some of those options, because it may be that an option like that could help your child to succeed. There are so many things that you can try out there that it's just good to look at all of your options to see, and then talk about that stuff with your community, because guess what? We are all in this together. And you will be amazed at how many other families are going through similar things. So it just helps so much to be able to talk about it with someone. Some of the places I found really great support is my co-op. We're part of a homeschool co-op. There are many in Albuquerque. Albuquerque is a very good, there's just tons of homeschool opportunities in this city. Some of the other places, I am a Facebook person, and I am like on so many pages that are about homeschooling with ADHD, homeschooling with learning disorders, homeschooling with blah, blah, blah. I do all of those, and it helps me to know what other people are going through, and helps me to feel like, okay, this isn't like I'm not in some crazy land over here. This is real. Other people are going through this. And this is what they tried. This is what they did. It helped me to not feel so alone and so locked in and just, ooh, because at the beginning, so many things were happening that I didn't understand. I needed to have those supports. And I wish that now looking back, I wish that I had turned to some of those supportive things sooner. It would have helped me My kid was great. My kid was doing wonderful. He was so happy to be home. He loved the environment of being home. But I was like, what am I doing? Is this okay? Is this normal? Oh my gosh. And I really needed that break. I needed another adult who had been through it. I just needed all that input. And so I encourage you to put that on your list of things to do very soon to get some of that supportive stuff there, for your kid, but for you too.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments before we end this?
Thank you, Libby. And Melissa, thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you guys for joining us. And I did record this, so we'll have this up, for future reference or, to pass on to other people. And as always, guys, feel free to reach out to us. We are here to support you and try to point you in the right direction. If you have a question about therapies or, any of those things that Libby talked about, reach out and we'll send you guys the links and the information. But I just want to thank Libby so much just for sharing. I mean, she's a wealth of information and she's just an amazing mom, an amazing homeschool mom. And this just proves like how great this community is, because she was so excited to come on here and talk with you guys. And so there are several others just like her that want to be here as a resource and a help to you guys. So you're not in this alone. Albuquerque is a crazy, amazing environment to homeschool in, and there are so many resources. So just reach out if you guys need anything.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
We wish you guys all the best. Woo!
Yes, you guys can do this. All right. Thank you guys